Everybody, welcome back to day 2 of Grand Prairie City Council budget discussions, looking at the 2020 and beyond. We left off yesterday after going through a number of areas of reductions based on alternatives that were provided from administration. There were a couple that we had sort of flagged for more information, and I wonder actually maybe before we move into the next section and the flagged items and referrals, maybe we should deal with those ones that were from the first tranche of items. I know Director Miller has shared some information with Council on at least one of them. So the two specific line items that were referred for more information was number 23, Community Rec Programming. Line number 23, implement a charge to school boards for booking agent of school gyms. That was a $20,000. And then the Muskogee Park Family Programs, that was listed at $123,000. Dr. Miller, are you prepared to talk about those? I know we're kind of putting you on the spot, as that being the first thing.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I'm just waiting for a little bit more information on number 23. Just a more detailed description of the process. I have a basic description, but within a few minutes I should have a detailed. Okay. But if we could switch to family programming.
Okay.
I did provide the table that Council has in front of them, I believe, and I can just add some comments to that. Maybe I'm too close. So I think the information that you have in front of you, it does show what our costs are. It shows what the attendance numbers are. I think clearly, well, if I can start off with the Teachers Convention again in the spring break camp. So in speaking with Haley Kramps this morning, her thoughts are, at the same time we offer programs at Eastlink Center as well as in the community gyms. We have capacity in both of those programs to add more kids. And this program here, she really doesn't think we need to offer it. It's a duplication of what we're offering elsewhere. So the recommendation on those two is still strongly to eliminate them. And then switching down to the Musketeers, the June camps, our attendance numbers are low there. And I asked why we continue to offer these, and it's one of those areas that we've been looking at, but we probably didn't look at soon enough, and we probably should have eliminated it sooner. And in her view and in my view and others' views as well, I think on the administrative side, we shouldn't be offering these ones. We do lose money on these. They're offered elsewhere. There's numerous other programs in the community that people can sign up for. And then switching to July, our numbers do go up. We're almost at capacity for most of the camps. And the facility we use isn't ideal. It's down at Muskogee Park. We can only put 20 people or 20 children into these programs. And in talking to Haley, there's programs elsewhere that have larger capacity that the city also operates. So at the bottom right, you see there's a dollar figure of $81.31. That's our profit from what you see in front of us. In addition to that, we have training costs of about $8,000 for staff, because we hire the seasonal staff in advance. We give them time to develop the programs. And so that dollar figure is about $8,000. Plus there's another small additional cost of $240 for field trips that isn't on the chart. So I'm still recommending we should eliminate these camps. We can accommodate the children elsewhere in different camps. If we did decide to keep the July camps, then the recommendation is that we should be probably significantly increasing the fees. I talked to Haley about that, and she said we used to be $100. We've crept up to $140. There was pushback from parents saying, why are the rates going up? But in talking to another staff member this morning, who I was advised, I think a camp elsewhere is about $240. So we're still well under the market or what others do charge. So it's an option for council to consider that we increase the fees if the desire is to keep the July component. But I still think they could be accommodated elsewhere.
Okay, thanks, Director Miller. Discussion, Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Mayor Given, and thank you for that overview, Director Miller. Just a question. I'm a bit confused because on our council package, it says that the cost of the program is about $123,000, and the sheets that you gave out says that minus the $8,240, that we're pretty much breaking even at $20,000. So,
Yeah, sorry.
touch on that a bit, please.
There's also, and I probably should have mentioned it yesterday had I thought of it, but there's a vacant position. It's been vacant since the summer, and our intent was not to fill it. And so that's where the difference is made up on the salary for a full-time position.
Okay, thank you.
So, council, we need either we take no action on this and administration revises the programming on their thing, or we can have some motion with other direction. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. So I would like to move that council accept administration's recommendation to eliminate the family programs at Muskogee Park, saving us $325,000.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Friesen. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Just a question for Director Miller. So there's the vacant position in here. Has there been discussion, or is there the possibility to keep the program and eliminate the position as recommended? Or
Thanks, Mayor Given. It's another option. We could do that, but in talking to Ms. Kremps this morning, she feels that that we can accommodate him elsewhere. So we could certainly keep the program. And I would, if we decided to do that, I would recommend that we will bring back an increase recommendation to the fee, and then just do the July programming. Not, it would still mean that we'd have to hire instructors probably 2 weeks in advance to set up the programs. So, but it's an option, certainly.
okay, thank you. So, all right, yeah, doing my quick math.
Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just similar to Councillor Thiessen's. If we were to approve keeping the programming but not the vacant position, that's an option for us to look at. And it would be basically the 22,513 is what we'd approve, but the position would not be filled, and so there would be the savings from that.
Right. Thanks, Mayor Given. So yes, we would still have the savings from the vacant position.
Okay, so right now the motion is to remove the 123,325. If administration is, sorry, it's not quite clear to me what the vacant position is versus the programming versus, so what, right now, the motion that council would vote on is to remove the full amount. If there's some partial amount or if there's something else, then we need to know what that is. Because I think that's a question that both Councillor Thiessen and Councillor Plott are looking to understand.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor Given. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing, and I might, the numbers, I don't have the exact numbers, but I know it was a vacant supervisor position. And I can certainly look up what it's.
That might be. Okay.
I could have a minute just to get
sure.
the salary dollars.
Sure, thanks.
Benefits.
So we'll get that information, and we do have others in the queue for discussion on the motion as it stands right now. Councillor Bressy.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. Question is, for the fees that families pay for this, are they eligible for the Recreation Access Program?
Dr. Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would think they would be, but I'd have to double check. But
and if I
Councillor Bressy.
just I don't need to ask I don't need to ask a question with the current motion on the table, but if we do end up talking about changing this, then I'll probably be, just a heads up that I'll be asking questions too about what else does this position do in terms of, are they just doing summer camps? Are they doing other things throughout the year? So the motion on the table, I don't need to ask that, but just heads up, if this motion changes, I'll be asking that.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Bressy. Councillor Clayton.
Mayor Given, I guess my question for Director Miller would be, what does cost recovery look like in this program? If we were only running the months or weeks, if you want to call it, that the camps are almost at full occupancy, and with the question from other councillors of whether or not we need this position to run the camps that are on the days that are full, what price point are we at for cost recovery? So I know that's really, really operational, but to me, these camps, seeing the numbers at 20 people and they're full, that's great. I do agree they're a little bit under market in regards to their pricing. However, they're definitely, if we can run them and without a huge loss, and if that means not hiring a person, I think there might be an appetite to continue them. So that's my question for you. And then if I can, I had a question for Director Walker. Can you remind me, because the assumption of jobs that aren't being replaced, the number of 22, are they all in the green items, or is there additional ones as well?
So we'll give Director Mill a little bit more time to answer all the questions he's got floating around, and we'll go to Director Walker first for that question.
Thank you, Mayor Given. The positions that were presented yesterday are all in the green items. Those were the green item impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And just thank you very much to our acting city clerk. I was reminded that we actually postponed the motion from yesterday, so that motion was still standing. It was just waiting to be discussed today. So, Councillor Friesen, you don't actually have to be on the record for this one. It's Councillor Minhas's motion from yesterday that we're just waiting to deal with again. I'd forgotten that, and thanks for the catch. Yeah, then you certainly do get a chance to speak to it. Director Miller, you had a couple of other questions. Do you have additional information?
All right. Thanks, Mayor Given. I believe the salary that we'd be saving with all in with benefits is $117,000. And then in relation to Councillor Clayton's question in talking to finance, I believe we'd be really close to break even. So she feels that we'd be full cost recovery. In talking to Danielle about it, just quick math. And if we wanted to, with no increase. So I was just going to add, if we wanted to do an increase, we could probably make a little bit of money.
Okay, Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. This is kind of in response to Councillor Bressy's. Is my understanding that the same supervisor position that ran this also did, the Canada Day Parade organization, as well as all the special events that are orchestrated throughout Muskosipi Park. Now, just a word of caution to council, and then a question with Director Miller. Yesterday, we approved all the special events to go through. That was the position we're talking about right now was the one that coordinated all those special events as well as these programs. So my question is to Director Miller, do we have the capacity with council's decision yesterday to continue on with the 17 events that we've done in the past at Muskosipi Park? Do you have the capacity at the park to handle that and this without this position?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I did check on that this morning because I had the same concern, and I was assured we still do have capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. So I am in support of Councillor Minhas's motion from yesterday. Just a reminder to all of my colleagues here that the children in these programs can be accommodated elsewhere. And that's really important to consider because we're not only cutting the, we would not only be saving the position dollars, but there was reference to $8,000 in training related to continuing these programs. And when we run these programs, we are blocking out time when other revenue can be made at the pavilion. If you've ever tried to book something down at the pavilion, it's often booked. And summer is a great time for birthday parties. I attend a number of workshops and other events down there, and it does open it up to increasing the revenue for the pavilion through those kind of events and still accommodating children, just not at Muskosipi Park. So for those reasons, I am, and the $8,000 savings in training as well, I am in favor of Councillor Minhas's motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. I'll just say that I won't support the motion for a couple different reasons. First, I think as we've just sort of seen that there are management options of how to make this work better. I think at this moment, the information about exactly what we could cut and keep the program is not 100% clear to me. And I would prefer that management had the flexibility to go away over the course of the year, look at this program in detail and say, okay, how could we retool it and bring that back to us when they've had a chance to have a look at it. Moreover, I think that it is important to have a variety of options over the course of the summer. As a parent who has kids who's attended these programs, these ones and other city ones, I will just say that it is challenging when we put a whole bunch of kids in one school gym. That does happen with city programs from time to time, where the programs that happen out at different schools are collected on certain days at the gym. Those can be situations where you have multiple different community sort of smaller groups getting together, where you have 60 to 40 children, and it's a zoo. To be really frank, I'm sure it's managed very, very well. But I wouldn't want to see us say, well, what we can do is just warehouse all the kids in one giant program because it's more cost efficient. I think having a little bit of a distributed nature where there are more options for children and for families, so that they can have different experiences over the course of the summer. For a kid to be stuck in one school gym all summer is not ideal. To have a variety of options is useful. And as we can see that this is not a significant burden to taxpayers, I think it's a wise investment. And I'm comfortable that now looking at this program, management would probably make the smart decision to say, well, when kids aren't in school, we probably don't need, or when the kids are in school, we probably don't need summer care during that time. That would be a reasonable change. But the rest of it, I can't support deleting this. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm honestly still torn on this, but I thought I'd share a little bit of context from my perspective with council as I'm trying to make my decision. Is for the seasonal camps for Teachers Convention and spring break, I actually really like those camps, and the reason is that I know in the Avondale area there's a lot of parents that don't have vehicles that are also working parents, and I know these camps are an alternative for them. It's not possible for them to take their kids to Eastlink Center or for other places, and so I like those camps. When it comes to summer camps, I'm really torn, and the reason for that is both my wife and I a lot of our careers were spent creating summer programming for kids, and a lot of my friends run summer programming for kids in a variety of nonprofits, and I know that nonprofit camps are really struggling, and that's because over the last 10 years there's been a lot more camps popping up, and there just aren't as many kids to go around as they are, and I know there's nonprofits don't have the luxury of not running full cost recovery, including their supervisory wage. In fact, a lot of nonprofits really rely on summer camps to make a little bit of extra income to help pay for their executive director. And also they really rely on summer camps to help spread what they're doing in the community so that parents and kids and future users know what they're doing. And I'm concerned about those camps going under and not happening in future years. I think that's a real blow to our nonprofit community. I'm worried that by us being in the space where we're subsidizing that supervisor role and we've got some killer advantages over them, that we might put some nonprofit camps under. I'd also highlight that this summer there's going to be some really big challenges with nonprofit camps in terms of the STEP grant has been eliminated. A lot of them really rely on that funding to run their summer programming, and that's going to make it even more difficult for nonprofit camps, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, it makes me even more leery of competing with these nonprofit camps. On the other hand, I'm really worried that we're going to lose a lot of nonprofit camps this summer and that parents won't have positive places to send their kids. So I honestly don't know if the losing of STEP funding makes me more or less likely to support this. It's something I'm really mulling over. I think that's really important context for council to consider.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much for that context, Councillor Bressie. That was I wrote a few notes down. That was one of them, that it's a centralized location in lower income areas like Avondale, some certain parts of College Park, as well as the Hillside area, and a lot of these parents come. The cost of the program has actually increased from the time my son was in them. I think they were $40 a week, and now they're up according to what I've heard, and that's great. But I have nothing but props for the entire programs. I think the instructors and they do a great job with the kids, and the kids have a lot of fun. And to have that exposure to our Central Park kind of makes it feel like it's theirs when they're there for a week. And the other part of it is as I just touched on, it's a very affordable program. I know that puts us in competition with not-for-profits, but for lower-income families, this becomes their option, and especially if they can't drive. I still have significant concerns about the capacity in cutting the position that we have. I know that we have a can-do attitude amongst our administration and in our city, but knowing what the actual position holds and covers and organizes throughout the course of the year, I think if we lose a body there, it's there's a potential that the quality of our events may go down, or the organization of our events may go down. And for those reasons, I'm going to be opposed to taking this out of our budget. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. I see Councillor Clayton.
Sorry, given. Maybe a process question, then I'll make my comments. To amend this, would you prefer the motion be defeated and a subsequent motion, or is there potential to amend this, not with potentially not with leaving in the reduction of not replacement of that staff and exploring different cost models, or would you suggest that?
Yeah, I appreciate the work that administration did to prepare, some details for us today, and that's still not as much as there's still a whole bunch of other variables and sort of alternatives. I don't know that we have enough information to say that this is the exact number to amend a specific amount to. Keeping in mind that I already said that I was going to vote against it, so take my advice for what it's worth. But my advice would be refer this to administration, ask them to look at it and bring back, more details or more specific recommendation. Okay. But if others just wanted to amend the amount, then fine, right? Just keep in mind I'm opposed to deleting it, so that might color my advice.
Okay, so I'm not in support of deleting the camps that Councillor Bressy referenced, the teachers' camps, the spring break camps, the July-August camps that are full. I am, however, in support of depleting that position. I do think that it's realistic that administration looks at pricing these camps at market value. I know even within our own organization, we have camps that are priced higher than these. And I really think that these camps offer something different than, say, the Eastlink or, the Armories building or different things. These camps really should almost be at a premium, and I appreciate Councillor Bressy's comments that they're in areas that people can walk to and take transit to. Most of our camps are in areas that people can walk to within their neighborhood and take transit to. But really, they have the best facilities in their backyard for these camps. They have potential for the spray park, they have potential for a skateboard park, they have potential for the outdoor pool, they have a great new climbing area facility and playground facility. So these camps should fill up first, in my opinion, if they were, and especially at the low price they are. So I think that I don't support the motion as is. However, I would also be interested in making a subsequent motion to ask administration to come back with different alternatives on the camps based on what council is sort of leaning towards. The camps that are full without hiring person. The $8,000 training, I appreciate the comment that, it's $8,000 we don't need to spend. I might be an assumption here because I don't know, but if we're not hiring a new person and these are repeat people, how much more training do they need every year? And based on what we sold last year in attendance, it's $44 per person to cover that training. So I think that there's an opportunity here, but I don't support getting rid of them completely. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I will be supporting the motion in its entirety. I think, the more I've thought about this, the more I look at it, and I really want to appreciate it. And thank Councillor Bressy on his comments. I think part of the budgeting process we're going through is we need to trust administration first and foremost. If they feel that they can handle this and they can move on without that position, then that's what they've said they've done. I don't think that's our role to get past that. If they think they can make it work, they can make it work. Secondly, this is another one of those areas where if industry can fill this bucket, we don't need to be in this space. And we need to start thinking like that more about government. I think that what's happened with municipalities over time and governments in general is we've tried to backfill a bunch of spaces where there was maybe a gap. If there's a bunch, my kids were in a lot of camps. They weren't in city camps, but they were in a lot of camps. They were full, they could be as full as they wanted to be. And I can appreciate subsidizing that, but I am worried about the not-for-profits. And I do think we have to be careful about being in space we don't need to be in. So for that reason, I'll support it. And I hope the council does support it. I think we need to trust our administration on this one.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I too trust our administration that if they say they can make it happen, they can make it happen. But still, in that light, I can't support this motion as it stands, based off of council decisions. I have very strong concerns about people organizing 17 events and all these kids camps and everything else like that off the side of their desk. Even if these camps were canceled, as is the motion on the floor right now, that's still 17 events that somebody else is going to have to put together and organize, and probably someone who's not working out of the pavilion in that capacity. It takes a lot of organization to do events. It takes a lot of organization to create these camps. I would be in favor of canceling the Junes, but I think that is more of an operational, and we can deal with that through committee just by tracking the numbers. I think we've done a great job so far of reducing where we need to reduce, and I think this is one area, especially with the children in mind, that I don't want to even entertain cutting. So I would encourage council to be mindful in your vote, and I'm okay with how it goes, but I sure hope you vote to defeat this.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. There's a couple others in the queue. I'll just say that I would just remind council of the driveway snow removal issue that was raised by administration. The same as all the rest of these were raised by administration of things that city could do. I would observe that when we did do that last time, there were private providers that sprung up to fill that gap. So absolutely, there are other private providers who can do things. What we're seeing here is ultimately a political decision. This is not an administrative decision. Administration can take whatever council's direction is. Ultimately, the question that we're asking, should be asking ourselves is this a program that is valued by the community? And in the same way that we obviously decided that the driveway snow removal was valued by the community to the tune of $350,000, this is a program that I would submit is valued by the community, in spite of the fact that there are other options available and that people can pay more. And I don't think anybody's saying that it is unreasonable to look at the costs of this. But I think just the fact that it was on the list doesn't mean that it is necessarily administration's advice that it should be cut. It's administration's advice that this is something that is a practical way to implement savings if council decides that there's a political will to do so. And that's what each council member should be asking themselves. Is this something that the community would see value in or not? And I guess I'd just ask council members to think of it that direction. I see the community services director wanted to get in the queue, and so may have more information for us. Arlen, do you want to?
Yes.
Mike?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I just wanted to, speak a little bit more about it, and based on what I've heard and the willingness on the part of council to keep some of the programs. So I think we have looked at how we can better use resources, existing resources, and we're quite confident we don't need the position that is vacant and has been vacant since the summer, and we can still do the events, the 17 events. We have instructors in different facilities that we can shift around as well. So I think we could accommodate the 2 March events. We can assess the June events and probably don't, but if you could leave it with administration, we can certainly maintain the July events, look at a small increase in fees and maybe a step increase in fees, and try to make it so that we're at least in the black. And I agree it's an ideal location down in the park, and it's within walking distance is what I also heard. So good reasons to maintain it. And if you leave it with us, we'll put it into the black, and we'll look at the amount of time that we have used for training. We asked the question this morning on the administrative side about why aren't we using the programs from previous years and just maybe updating, reducing the time that we need to train instructors. If we get return staff, then that's advantageous to us as well. So there's options that we could look at and get us into the black. But I think if it's left with admin, then we can certainly do that. But I really don't think we do need that vacant position. So.
Okay, thanks very much, Director Miller. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I live in that neighborhood, Avondale area, and I know that my grandchildren and my children went to those day camps over the years. But I really don't want to do it. I'm in support of the motion that's on the table now. Just because of some of the statements that were made here, Councillor Bressie mentioned there's lots of nonprofits out there that are struggling. We got potential space that we could rent out at more of a cost and more profit possibly, if that's what we're looking, or at least cost recovery. I know I've tried to book events. My family has tried to book events, and they're just space, I should say. And there is a difficult time to get space in Muskosipi Park Pavilion, Ernie Radburn Pavilion, at some peak times during the summer. And whether they were for birthday parties or just social gatherings. So I will be supporting this, and I'm looking forward to possibly administration coming up with so just different ideas on possible recreational programs for the kids, not necessarily at the pavilion. We look at that area. We've got skateboard park, which is free. We've got the spray parks that are free, and you know, there's lots of things that you can do right at the lagoon there, and do fishing, and race your little motorbike or motorboats and stuff like that down there, which is pretty popular. And all that is free, and I just think that there's lots of things out there that we don't necessarily need to have the facility being used. So with that, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Mayor Given. Just just a couple cautions to council. I'm not convinced that if these camps are eliminated, we're going to get the same revenue and get if there is significant opportunity for revenue and rentals. I just remind council that this is during the weekdays, not during evenings and weekends that these camps are happening. It's actually, if we're looking at this from a revenue perspective, which I don't think we should be, but if we're looking at this from a revenue perspective, it seems that filling our own programs during non-prime rental hours is actually the best way to maximize that ability from a revenue perspective, seems to me. I'd also just caution council in terms of a guy that's hired for summer camp programs. Often you run June programs at a loss because that's what it takes to get quality instructors. If you shorten your camp seasons to July and August, that makes more sense from a balance book, but it's very, very, very difficult to get quality instructors. And something I've been very proud of city programs is I've put my kids in camps where there's quality instructors, and I've put my kids in camps where there's non-quality instructors, and I've only ever had quality at city programs, which is something I've been very proud of as a counselor. I think that I'm going to be voting no towards this motion. For me, it is just as I weigh the relative risks. I really am looking at this from a risk management perspective of what happens to camps in our community next summer. And for me, I think there's just too much risk of there not being enough camp opportunities with the STEP grant going down. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting no to this motion. At the same time, if council does decide to keep these programs, then I think we should be making a follow-up motion to have a review of these at the committee level. And I think that if we are going to maintain city programming, we've talked about obvious things here. I also think that if we are going to run city camps, we should be figuring out what's different about city camps than nonprofit camps, whether that's hitting low-income kids or whether that's engaging families with the city so that they have positive interactions with us, they have trust in the local government, or whatever other reasons. I think we need to have a clear reason of why we have camps if we're going to continue them long term, not just because they're good. So I think if we do keep these camps, we should be having more conversation about them in the future to make sure that they're meeting strategic ends beyond just being great camps in the community.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Thank you for that context, Councillor Bressie. I appreciate it, especially with your background and experience. As a parent, but I've never ran camps or organized them. I know you have that, so I really appreciate it. I'm going to stick to my no, but I wonder if there's a possibility to amend the original motion.
There's always a possibility to amend a motion if you have something specific.
All right, so we're actually here to always remain open. That when we get to this table, we should be willing to be able to change our mind if so convinced. And I wasn't convinced yesterday that we could do without this position and with these camps. But after hearing Director Miller's constant reassurance during this round of questioning on whether or not we can do without the organizational position, the supervisor position to do that, and also the reassurance that they will take it back if council so chooses and try to find a way to make it in the black, and even perhaps having all the dates still open so that we can have those quality instructors hired. So I'm going to propose an amendment that we remove this line item to reflect the removal of the position and not the program, if that's amenable.
So do we have a number that would reflect that?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I believe the number is 117,000 with salary and benefits.
So that would be the amount that Councillor Thiessen would amend the motion rather than 123,325.
Yes.
You'd be amending that number to reflect 117,000. Councillor Thiessen. Okay. Okay. So that's Councillor Thiessen's amendment. The intent behind the amendment, I think, is clear, to remove that vacant position. But to retain the ability to offer the programming, and administration would obviously to undertake regular sort of review of that programming. Director Miller?
Yes, that's my understanding. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So Councillor Thiessen has a motion to amend Councillor Minhas's motion to reflect that new figure, to have the reduction be 117,000 rather than the 123,325. Any discussion or debate on Councillor Thiessen's amendment? I don't see any on Councillor Thiessen's amendment, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. I'm looking for one more. Thank you. That motion does carry. And so we're back to the main motion as amended, which now reflects a reduction of $117,000. Any further discussion or debate on the main motion? I don't see anybody ringing in. Then I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. So that handles our one. Councillor Barresi?
I'm actually going to make a follow-up motion to that, and I think that there is more conversation that should happen to this before we get to budget 2021. So I'm going to move the council direct administration to report to the appropriate standing committee with a list of the camp programs the city offers. And just to speak to that, I think that council should have more conversation about what's our vision for offering these kinds of camps to kids. What do we want to get out of them? But honestly, I don't know what the city offers. I know which programs we've just talked about. I know which programs I've put my kids in. We talked about programs at community gyms. I actually wasn't even aware that the city was offering those. I was vaguely aware of it, but I can tell you what those programs are. I think that I'd like us to take a holistic look at what we're doing for camp programs for kids.
So, Councillor Barresi, the motion as worded is just for them to put a list of the programs that we offer. That could just as easily be emailed around. If there was an intention to actually have a discussion about city programming or city camps, then maybe that's a different thing. But if your intent is just to get a list, management could probably whip off a list and email it to us this afternoon. So, but I think your intent is something different.
Well, my intent is that we discuss this at a committee level. And I don't know if I need more information from management to set up what I want to get out of that committee conversation initially, other than that list. So I guess I could, just to get it, I guess if it got emailed to me, I could get it added to a standing committee on my own prerogative, but this motion seemed more efficient from my perspective, but happy to.
Sure. So maybe it's just, refer the issue of city children's programming to the appropriate standing committee with the information that in terms of background, a starting point would be that list. But I mean, the point is to have a discussion about it there rather than just to see a list.
Yeah, I'd welcome whatever friendly amendments you feel are appropriate to this motion. I think, yeah, my intent is to have that discussion in committee. And whatever friendly amendments best set that up, I'm fine with.
Okay, so referral of city camp programming to the appropriate standing committee. Okay. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Councillor Plott?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I like the motion. I think it's a good conversation. I still think about when we were in AUMA a couple of years ago when Councillor Barresi, myself, and Thiessen were in City Hall of Calgary for a camp that was there for kids to learn about municipal government. And so, I mean, that could be part of a conversation. I do think there's an opportunity for us to look at these camps and see if there's value for the city in other ways that we don't currently see it. We're a large organization that has a lot of staff, and planting that seed about all the amazing opportunities to work for municipality at a young age is important to me. So I think a conversation about it could be great and might be open other conversations and doors for us. So appreciate the motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Plott. Okay, so we have a motion of referral. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing nobody ringing in, please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. So we had our other item. Councillor O'Toole, you had something?
Yes, just further along with maybe looking at review. Yesterday we talked about Muskogee Park programs, the events that we did, the special events, and I was just wondering if we could get the total number of events that we do and review them at a committee meeting just to see maybe we can pick and choose with the administration, suggesting of which ones were successes and which ones were not so successful, and then we can maybe support those ones. Basically get a review of the programs, the events that we host at the Muskogee Park when it comes to funding these or booking them for the weekends. Is that making sense to you, sir?
Sounds kind of, not exactly, but it sounds kind of similar to what Councillor Bressie asked for, a review of that.
Review and have administration give us some advice on which ones were successes and which ones were not successful. And maybe we can support and continue hosting all 17, or maybe just hold it down to whatever.
Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. We can certainly do that. We could wrap it into one report perhaps, or I'll talk to our team about that, the best way to approach it, but we could bring all the events and all the programs and that we offer and have a discussion at committee.
Okay. Good, Councillor O'Toole.
Just want to add also any other concerns that the programmers are having to deal with, whether there's successes or failures, whether staffing problems or stuff like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. So administration, Director Miller just offered. So we have one motion that was specific to the programming, child care programming. Maybe Councillor O'Toole, and just thinking in terms of equity and making sure that your specific issue is on the list, and maybe we just do that by a motion as well. Sort of review of special events programming. If you're comfortable with that.
Yeah. Mayor Gibbon, I'd make a motion that we review the special events at Muskogee Park and
at the appropriate standing committee period.
Yep.
That will probably get it on the books.
Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Director Miller, are you prepared to speak about item number 23, community rec development and the scores?
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Yes, I have the information now, and sorry for the delay. So if I can, I'll just describe what the role is, how the process works. So I think as I said yesterday, we have one position that's dedicated to working on the scores agreement for the bookings. So that position is the first point of contact for all bookings and any inquiries about the program or about bookings. And that position liaises with all the other partners for the scores agreement and with community groups that are interested in booking. And they complete all the bookings. And to address the school requirements, all that information is gathered in May and then booked into our computer system. Right now it's called Class, and that's done by the end of June. And then community groups can then begin booking starting July 2nd of every year. All large seasonal bookings for leagues and tournaments, etc., are booked and distributed by the end of August of each year. And then bookings continue throughout the season as well from September 15th until June 15th. And they're completed as they're received. And then just another part of the process, for each booking, the contract is sent out via email to the user group, the community user group, or the school that's affected, and also the respective school district for invoicing purposes and also for staffing. So for the scores partners, they're responsible for their own invoicing and staffing. And if it's in a community gym, then the city's responsible for the invoicing and the staffing requirements as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Director Miller. I think this is a similar one that was postponed. Whose motion was it originally? Councillor Clayton's. Okay. Okay. So, and the motion was to reflect the reduction. Okay. Okay. So that motion's still on the floor. That's the additional information in terms of process. Is there any discussion or debate on this? I guess I would have a question. So right now, Director Miller, this proposes to add a charge to the school boards. So I have no problem with the city collecting additional money to subsidize this function, which I think would be the same. It's just about where it comes from. If the cost of booking a gym goes up $1 a booking or $2 a booking or whatever, then that would make sense to me that the end user pays it and we just implement a booking fee. How would we give that direction if there was an interest from council to do that rather than to just put as a charge to the scores partners?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I think then what we'd have to probably do is add it to the fees and charges as a surcharge for a scores booking. So, okay. Sorry. Okay, so then in listening to Susan, she would recommend defeating this motion and then bringing back a motion to add it to the fees and charges.
Okay. So I'll say that's what I would encourage council to do. Defeat this motion. We can fulfill the same purpose, but be clear in our direction that it's the end users that should pay that cost by putting it in the fees and charges as a booking fee. I think that that's preferable to loading costs onto our other scores partners who are facing challenges of their own. And I, as a community organizer of leagues in the past and somebody who's booked gyms, I think the couple bucks probably will be noticed, but will be accepted by the community. I think in the end, it's a reasonable charge, and I would encourage council to defeat this motion, make a second one to give administration that direction to add it as fees and charges. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just a question for administration on this then. If we were to just approve this $20,000 today, would the school board not internally just say we need to change the fee that we charge for the gyms to offset this cost? Like, I'm not sure why we're creating all this extra work. This doesn't need to be a download cost to the school board. I think what it does is puts the school board on motion that, hey, we need to start charging you to book it. What do you need to charge for your gym fees to offset this? There's going to be a cost either way. We can call it a min fee. We can call it whatever we want. I just would rather deal with it now than defer it. I mean, I think the conversation with the school board could be pretty simple. They're going to raise their fees. We're either going to charge an admin fee or they're going to raise their fees. Either way, it's going to be the same dollar amount. So I don't know why we'd waste the time of not pushing forward with this now and just having that conversation happen sooner than later.
Director Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given. So I think that's certainly what could happen is they could raise their fees. And if we did the surcharge on the booking, I'm not sure what the revenue would be. I don't know how many bookings we do per year. So I don't have that number right now. But with Councillor Platt's option, that we could probably achieve the $20,000 in savings.
Okay, thanks, Director Miller. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I can completely appreciate the fact that these other organizations are in hard times as well, but I remind our council we are as well. It's not our responsibility to worry about lack of funding and shortcomings of other organizations. It's our responsibility to mitigate risk for our own organization. Therefore, I do support the reduction of this $20,000.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would encourage council to defeat this motion, but then to make a motion to be reviewing fees and charges. And speak to two things is, first of all, just looking at, we're one organization, these are other organizations, and they're all taxpayer funded, and looking at what's an efficient use of taxpayer dollars, I think it probably makes sense to have one organization, the city, implement a fee than to ask two school boards and the college all to look at implementing fees on their own. So sorry, that's three organizations, two school boards and the college. So I think it's, from a taxpayer perspective, it might be more efficient for us to do this. I also think that it's these aren't our organizations, but it's our residents that are going to these every day. And I'm honestly nervous about the impacts that this community is going to feel through our schools and through our college. And I think this is a small way to help mitigate that, but I think a reasonable way to help mitigate that is by us doing the work to charge users directly rather than ask these organizations to absorb it, and then hopefully find the time while they're also filling up millions of dollars of holes in their budget that they can't necessarily make up through new revenue sources like we can. I don't want to ask them to do that work. I think we should be doing this work. It's more efficient, and I think it's going to have a better outcome for our residents.
Thanks, Councillor Bessie. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor. Given just a couple of questions on administration on that. If we were to look at that, how would us charging a user fee get us our cost recovery? I'm confused about that. And so that's my first question. My second question is, what would be the additional cost of the city to now have to administer a user fee and reconcile user fees on every single transaction to try to achieve this $20,000? If we're trying to be the most streamlined usefulness here of our staff's time and a booking agent, which allows all the schools and everybody to use one booking agent like we're currently doing, charging a user fee isn't the right answer. Charging more for the rate and just having it float where we charge $20,000 a year to do it is the simplest, cleanest, probably most cost-effective way to do it. So I guess I'll go back to, sorry about that, I kind of gave you my opinion before I asked my question, but what do we have any idea of what it would, how we'd even charge a cost recovery fee on it, and what the additional work would cost the city to look after that process?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'll try to respond to that. But I know we charge, as an example, at Revolution Place, there was a surcharge on the tickets, so that we have a process on how we can do it. And Susan said it wouldn't be too cumbersome to implement the process. So I think our software programs allow us to do that quite easily.
Okay.
Thanks, Director Miller. The city manager was sort of leaning into my ear saying, we're going down into a hole around process here rather than the number, because I'm not debating the number. I have no problem with capturing that funds. It's about the recommendation that's here is written as the school boards. I'm hearing that there's some interest from some members to look at other alternatives, probably interest from everybody to capture this amount of money. So I think the challenge that we have here is around what sort of the recommendation is. If there was an amendment to direct administration to find a way to recover that amount of money and provide administration a broader range of flexibility, that would be something I could get behind. I appreciate administration has sort of heard the discussion from council here and would have a chance to think about the right way to do that. But as it is right now, the motion is the reduction of $20,000 to implement a charge for school boards for booking agent of gyms. Any other discussion or debate? I don't see anybody in the queue with discussion or debate on that motion, so I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Do we have any follow-up motions? Councillor Bessie?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that we direct administration to initiate necessary changes to implement a user booking fee for scores bookings.
And reflect the reduction of $20,000.
And reflect a reduction of $20,000 in the 2020 budget.
Okay. Thanks very much. So again, the same end result, but a bit more specific around the method that council would choose. Any discussion or debate on Councillor Bessie's motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. So that handled our two items from our previous list that were postponed for additional information. Thanks, Director Miller and your team for gathering that information sort of on the fly or overnight. We will continue on then. Let's see. We'll continue on then, and I'll turn to the city manager for an introduction of our next section.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So earlier this year, Council provided management with a tax target. That was inflation plus minus 1%. And at that time, management committed to prepare a menu of options to Council for about $10 million. Those options were ranked, considering the level of impact on the community and the organization. So yesterday, during council budget deliberations, we presented what we call the green package, with the lowest impact. That package was fully endorsed by management. Today, the directors, we will talk about the next two packages, the yellow and the red package. That means that the level of impact on the community and organization is higher. It's a very larger degree of impact on the community or the organization. The directors will present again by service area, similar to what we did yesterday, and could be discussion and debate of those options. I just want to be clear, those options have significant impact. They are not endorsed by management. However, it's up to council to decide, just keeping in mind the larger degree of impact on the community or the organization. After that, we will talk about additions to staff, capital items, and finally we have a list of referred items and an open block for any other items that council may wish to include in the deliberations. And finally, we'll perform a tax impact calculation and potential transfer to reserves.
Thanks very much, City Manager Galante. Council, how are we feeling? Do we want to enter into this first area, or do we want to take a bit of a break now? How's everybody feeling? Okay. So let's head into the discussion of the additional items. I guess we start first. We'll go back to the start with Protective and Social Services and Director Manuel.
Okay, thank you. So the first item is item number 33, and actually following subsequent information becoming available following the creation of this strategy, I'm actually going to suggest that section number 33 would actually form part of our red package now, as opposed to our yellow package. Emergent information indicated that the reduction that would be proposed here would essentially be the elimination of home support, which is a different proposal than we initially had. So from that context, I would actually suggest that this would move to your red package, which would be the most significant impacts. Moving down to number 34, we have RCMP alert. So under the same vein as yesterday, understanding that the RCMP is certainly our largest municipal operating expenditure. In preparation of our $10 million package, we allocated a few options within the RCMP, and one of those options that was believed to be the least impactful, but still impactful to the community, would be at a reduction of 3 positions to our 5-person alert allocation. So alert is the provincial Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, which is a provincially based team that covers organized crime investigations for the northwest region of the province. So the team in Grande Prairie has a complement of 14 members, 9 of which are provincially funded, 5 of which are municipally funded. There is regional teams based out of Fort McMurray, Grande Prairie, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and Red Deer. The suggestion here would be that understanding the pressures that our local RCMP detachment are under on a day-to-day basis in responding to calls for service in the community, that this team, if positions needed to be reduced, this team here would not have the same direct day-to-day impact that our local detachment members would have, and that they have a different scope and different mandate. In the next line item, which is number 35, this would not be a reduction to the number of RCMP members, but would be a reduction in the support staff. Again, this would have impacts operationally on our day-to-day policing services, because frankly, administrative support tasks that are being performed by professionals that have that particular skill set would then need to be performed by the RCMP members themselves that would be pulled away from their operational duties to, again, execute some of those administrative taskings that are, in my opinion, more efficiently performed by the municipal employees. And then number 36 would ultimately be a reduction of a position, likely through attrition, but at this point, it would be a reduction of an overall FTE position within our fire prevention branch that would affect things such as community outreach, education in schools, inspections, and the frequency in which they occur. Again, next year, we are embarking on a complete service delivery review. It's in the capital plan within the fire department. I think this would be certainly achievable, but it would be impactful, and we'll have a better assessment of what the impacts would be following the review.
Okay, thanks very much, Director Manuel. We'll follow the same process as last time, and we'll move on then to community services, I think, is our next section. Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Given. So number 37 is in relation to parks as well. And to achieve these savings, what we'd have to do is look at eliminating the porta potties in the parks, including South Bear Creek, Muskosipi, and the satellite shops. And we determined that's probably about a $40,000 cost currently to the city. And then we'd also reduce the rototilling in the playgrounds, reduce asset renewal, and reduce surveillance cameras, and that combined is over $300,000 in savings. Also eliminate mosquito and weed control. And when I say eliminate, it would probably be a further reduction. And that's a number of, as an example, the mosquito control is $119,000 that we're currently spending. That's for the product plus the contractor fees. $32,000 for weed control. That's another contract that we have. And then about $7,000 for chemicals and salts. And the impact would be obviously inconvenience for the public with the lack of the porta potties. We'd have harder playground surfaces, which puts us at a little bit of a risk. So right now we try to keep it like a soft landing zone, softer, I guess. And then more weeds and more mosquitoes, and our assets would show the age. We wouldn't renew as often. And then without surveillance cameras, greater potential for vandalism in our facilities or in the parks. And we'd also look at further reduction of 5 seasonal staff. And then moving on to number 38, at Revolution Place, we would adjust our customer service hours, the hours of operation at the box office, and to share with council the information about online ticket sales. Since the transition to Tixit, it's at about 71.4%, which previously was at 62%. And since Tixit is fairly new yet, we do expect the number to rise over time to get into the 80 to 90% range. So to explain Tixit, it's the option of electronic ticket delivery. It's not, that's something we didn't offer in the past. So, and then for the Bose Event Center, right now it's about 69% of our customers choose to have their tickets delivered electronically. And for Revolution Arena, not including the Storm games, that percentage is at just over 80% that get them delivered electronically. So in the past, prior to Tixit, these people would have to stop at the box office, so we had longer lines, and this has reduced our lineups. And then number 39 is in relation to transit. So this would be further adjustment of the hours of service, further reduction of evening hours of service by 1 hour on routes 1 to 4. We'd be removing all the splits on routes 1, 2, and 3, and also reduce the frequency during the summer on the same routes. And the impact would be our clients would face longer wait times. They'd have to plan better to accommodate their needs, if it's employment or if it's recreational. And there's a risk that they're going to look at other options if there's other options available to them, and that would impact our revenues as well for transit services. And then moving on to number 40, That's the city assuming management of Center 2000. Currently, we have a contract with the Chamber of Commerce to provide that service. So the impact there is, I think it would reduce the revenue for the Chamber. But on the other side of things, it would increase revenue opportunities for the city with the rental space. And it would also provide us, if we needed it, additional office space for city staff. And that would be estimated as about $150,000 in savings. That includes the revenue plus the savings. And then number 41, that would be removal of the matching grants for and also reduce the neighborhood grant to $1,500. It's currently at $2,500. And that would force the associations to look at other funding sources if those are available. It would translate into $55,000 in savings for us. Currently, I believe the number that we set aside is about $85,000 for these grants. So it would reduce, the new cap would be $30,000 for the grant program. And that's it, Mayor Given, unless I have any questions.
Thanks, Director Miller. And we'll go on to corporate sponsorships. There's just one left on this list. Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Again, this is not endorsed by management. We've included this fund, which is under my office's control, as limiting our participation. The events would still continue. That the cap on this fund per event is $2,000. But it would limit our ability to have city support for some events, such as regional sporting events. We supported Indigenous Veterans Day luncheon this year. It is fund we use for things like the Northern Spirit Light Show. So our elimination, the events would continue, but our recognition, we would not have a mechanism to do that.
Thanks very much, Shane. So any questions on any of these areas? For any of the directors? Oh, we've got a few people in the queue. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I guess this is a question for Director Manuel. In regards to the alert program, just a little more information I'm looking for. So the non-endorsed is to reduce our municipal contribution to alert from 5 officers to 2. From what you reported, there's a complement of 14 officers that go through the Northwest region. 5 are city, 9 are other municipalities. What's the composition of those other municipalities?
Okay, so sorry, just to clarify. So Grande Prairie is the only municipality that contributes positions within the Northwest region. All of the other positions would be provincially funded as part of our provincial policing contract. Certainly only municipalities over 5,000 people have a responsibility for paying for policing in the province. Otherwise, they fall under the provincial policing contract. That being said, the municipal contributions of other municipalities, so for instance, in Fort McMurray, there's a municipal contribution of 5 officers. Lethbridge has a contribution of 4, Medicine Hat 7, and Red Deer 6. As a percentage of our overall authorized policing strength, Grande Prairie certainly carries above our comparators there. For instance, Lethbridge has 172 police officers and allocates 4 positions. So in Grande Prairie last year, we had an authorized strength of 100 police officers with our 5. So we've certainly done our contribution there, but that was in recognition of, at the time, I guess when the request was made, the value that was perceived. But certainly not saying that the positions aren't valuable, but if I had to choose between our local resourcing, which is responding to the 911 calls and those sorts of things that are occurring in the community today, versus the proactive regional enforcement, my advice would be is if we had to look inward at this, that's where I would suggest you look.
Okay, and if I may have a follow-up question, Mayor Given. Thanks for that clarification, Director Manuel. I'm sort of thinking of the Fort Mac context. So they have a complement of 4, or sorry, 5. It was Lethbridge that had 4. Sorry, just looking down the page. So If we were to seek out any reductions, it would likely be reduced to one regional team consistent with other mid-sized cities and not two as we currently have. Is there the potential to still keep two if we don't reduce by as much as 3 alert officers?
So just to be clear, the team size overall on the regional team seems to be pretty consistent between around 15 people. So the other regions probably do have 2 teams as well when their positions are fully staffed. I can't speak to whether they would be able to maintain 2 teams or not. I'm at various times over the course of the life cycle of the regional team, they certainly have collapsed to 1 team in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I'll think about that and I'll let other people ask questions.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just staying with alert, Director Manuel, just curious, what amount of control does the city have in what alert does for the community?
Director Manuel.
So to answer your question, the city has, outside of funding, very little control at this point. Now, alert is an independent body that was structured that way for a specific reason. Certainly, I can't speak to all the nuances as to exactly why it was formed, but it does. The model being that Grande Prairie is a little bit different in that we are policed both rural and municipally by the RCMP, which is one agency that doesn't have the same barriers that perhaps having separate agencies has. So, for instance, if we're talking in the Lethbridge context, you have the city of Lethbridge with their Lethbridge Regional Police, Lethbridge Police Service now. And then outside the city, it's the RCMP. So sometimes there's jurisdictional issues that arise. So when there's cross-jurisdictional investigations, it's useful to have a process in place where you can transcend those borders and stuff. Obviously, in Grande Prairie, we have a different context, but similar, although it's the same organization, there's very different reporting structures. So for instance, these officers assigned to the alert regional team do not report to our officer in charge at the detachment or frankly our district officer as well. They report into Edmonton out of the alert office there. So to this point, we certainly haven't executed a whole lot in the way of any sort of reporting or accountability or frankly even really updates outside of what we see in the media. And there certainly could be opportunity to reach out to alert and perhaps improve on that.
And can I have one more question? Sure. Yep. Just another question on that. If there was an appetite for council to say, let's move these 3 positions from RCMP into RCMP in the local detachment, is that something that could be done, or would it be different? Are they different type of officers, I guess, that would be easily convertible to have them come straight across and work for the local detachment?
So in a local context, the vast majority of the 5 members allocated to the regional teams in Grande Prairie do typically come from the Grande Prairie detachment. They're typically more seasoned officers that have spent some time at the detachment and kind of progress through different units that move over there. Now, there wouldn't be a guarantee that the experienced officers would return back to the detachment. If the funding returned there, the officers may fall into other positions within the organization, or they may come back. That being said, certainly would the detachment locally here welcome any additional support as far as resourcing goes to address some of the concerns that exist? Absolutely. I'm sure they would love to have more positions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. Just give me a second as I scroll down my notes. I've got 2 questions for Director Miller. One surrounded item 38, which is changes to Revolution Place box office hours. My understanding of that, so to be straight up, my concern is sometimes when you go to busy Storm games and you miss a lot of the first period because you're waiting in line a long time. My understanding is that this change wouldn't change how many staff we have at peak hours. It would just change how many hours the box office is open when events aren't actually happening, but people might come in to buy tickets. Is that a correct understanding?
Director Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given. wonder if would it be possible to go in camera for?
Absolutely, as if the
I would-
answer has in-camera information.
Move that we go in camera then.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. Call a question on the motion to go in camera. Please vote. Folks, so motion to go in camera. Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Platt. Thank you. That motion carries. So we'll go in camera and discuss the labor. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Council concluded their in-camera discussion to get additional information from administration with respect to land, legal, and labor implications. Council, we're back to administration has presented the yellow list of the items that are not endorsed by administration. I don't know, City Manager Galante, if you were going to also introduce the red items as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do a quick introduction. So we have only two items. One is for the infrastructure area and one for corporate services. So the directors will provide a high-level overview of these two items. Just to remind Council, these two items have a significant impact on the community if they're executed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess the first step would be in the transportation area. Director Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So the adjustments in this scenario would require that we absorb all the additional costs of maintenance of the bypass, so Highway 43 or former Highway 43 through the city, into our existing budget with no increase in revenue. So currently we're funding that out of the transportation highway grant that we received upon taking over that section. This would also require us to eliminate our dedicated Durapatch crew, which does a significant amount of all the pothole repair throughout the city. And essentially what it would do is we'd have to take other people from other crews and do periodic repairs throughout the city in the most severe areas with potholes, as opposed to a much more comprehensive approach. As well, this would reduce seasonal labor. We reduce our contracted asphalt program. So we use our contracted asphalt program to do more significant and complex asphalt repairs that are of much larger sections and require more specialized equipment. This would reduce our gravel tender, so the amount of gravel that we put onto the road surface in any of the rural service area or any of the other gravel roads in the city. This would reduce our line painting as well, so we would only do one course of line painting throughout the city each year, so that would include your crosswalks, stop bars, essentially any painted surface within a road right-of-way. This would also reduce our contracted snow hauling, so this is separate from the residential program. So this is trucks that we use in order to remove any of the windrows on Priority 2, any of the piles of snow that we get in cul-de-sacs from the residential program. So the risk of here, especially on the road surface, is that when you don't keep up with repairs on the road surface, you have the potential of compromising the base and sub-base of the road. So if you have water infiltration from not keeping the surface repaired, that seeps into the base and sub-base and can cause further degradation in the freeze-thaw cycles. As well, essentially the impact of this will be noticeable, and everything that we do will just take longer, and ultimately we'll do less of it over the course of the year.
Thank you very much, Director Glavin. The next was in the corporate facilities management. Director Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So item number 44 is facilities. This item would affect 12 different city-owned facilities. So 12 different community groups where the maintenance of those facilities would be discontinued by the city and put on as a responsibility for the community group that is currently housed there. This is an item that comes up about every 10 years where the city makes a community group responsible for the maintenance of a building, and then in about 10 years the city has to come back and correct maintenance deficiencies. So much like roads not being maintained regularly, buildings that aren't being maintained regularly deteriorate and end up needing much larger investments to bring them back to usable standards. This is an item in the red section. It does come with considerable risk to the city and to those community groups that would be asked to maintain those facilities. In light of the fact that in the current capital plan for 2019, Council approved a wholesale facility condition index report. That project is currently underway, and we're expecting the results of that within the next month or so. I would recommend that council delay a decision on this item until actually viewing that facility condition index report.
Thanks very much, Director Walker. So after hearing the two sections and having the opportunity to ask questions, is there anything arising? Councillor Bressie.
Sorry, Mayor Given. I've got a motion arising eager to make about the yellow package, but I've also got a question about the red package I'd like to ask first.
Sure, by all means.
And that is Director Glavin. Sorry, I think I'm misunderstanding something between today and yesterday. So you're saying that, if I'm understanding what you just said, my brain was still warming up from breaks, maybe I just misheard it, but you're saying that if we approved item 43, more of the operational funding for the bypass would be taken out of our operational budget and go against the grant we received. But yesterday I thought I heard that we're paying for all of the operational needs of the bypass for the next year from that grant. So can you just clarify what's going on with the operational needs of the bypass in 2020 under the budget before council makes any changes?
Dr. Lavin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Given. So the operations, so the increased amount of activity that we have due to the bypass is currently budgeted from the Highway Transportation Grant. So if we didn't approve the budget as it's presented right now with that funding source, we would either need to find a different funding source to do that, or I would have to absorb any of the additional costs into our existing program. So it wouldn't be a matter of we would have the same budget as we had before. So we would back out these costs that we've put in under the highway grant, but it would impact every other road in the city. So we'd use our existing resources for this road.
Out of the clarity you're looking for, Councillor Bressie?
Yes, did it. Yeah, and then, well.
Okay. Councillor Clayton.
Sorry, business arising. It's not necessarily, it's in the middle of the list, so I don't know if you're all right with that, or if you want to start at the top.
No, administration, I think at this, these two sections are areas where administration is advising caution. I think the intent here is if there's something specific council wants to talk about, then by all means. I don't think the intent from administration or in terms of the process was to go through and to council choose yes or no. I think all these are saying, I'll be really blunt. I think administration saying you could. We don't necessarily advise that you do. I think these are all things that are implementable, and administration is advising higher degrees of caution with respect to all of these items. So I think this is really up to council territory, and it's about how much risk, political or otherwise, we're willing to take on. So by all means, if you want to start in the middle, start in the middle.
Sure, thanks. I would move that council support recommendation number 38, the elimination of one permanent staff member position at the box office at Revolution Place with the financial implication of $51,866.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Open for discussion and debate. I will, there's nobody else in the queue, so I'll say that I won't support this. I appreciate administration's recommendation about caution here, and that there are a number of other things that they are waiting to mature before making a determination about the operations in that area. I heard not just about the online ticketing, which I think is sort of the front-end thing that many of us have experience with. I would expect that more things will move that way, but I appreciate that our organization is pretty complex, and we've made another of changes in other areas where positions may do dual duties. And I think that we need to see how changes in one area shake out before making changes in another area. So for the fact that we've implemented new technology and we want to see how that turns out, and that we've made significant changes in other areas that will also sort of impact here, I won't be supporting the motion. I think there's a manageable and responsible way to implement change, and I think that that is in a sequential manner, and you deal with the next things next. And my belief is that administration's recommendation on this position is that this may be a next thing, but that it isn't for today, in my view. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I will be supporting the motion. I think with the way that online ticket sales are going, we're going to see this continue to trend up. And my fear would be we're going to hire a position or keep a position that in a year or 2 years down the road, we're going to be sitting here eliminating. And so for me, I'd rather not hire somebody and potentially let them go down the road. So I will be supporting this motion.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Platt. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Then I'll call for the vote on Councillor Clayton's motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Mayor Given. I'm going to make a motion regarding item 34, and it would actually be a different motion that's proposed here, and the motion I'm going to make isn't going to actually save the city any money, but I think it will make our money have a better impact, and that is I would move that council remove $480,000 of funding dedicated to alert and reallocate that towards funding for municipal RCMP. And just because it's not an easy decision, I think alert does really good things for our province, and through that it does really good things through its community. At the same time, I think that there's decisions that have been made by the provincial and federal governments that are forcing hard decisions. We talked about how the provincial budget delivers about $1.7 million worth of changes to the city. I'd actually say that's underreporting the impact. We've also got the bypass, that's another $750,000. We've also got changes to RCMP. About $4.5 million worth of impacts are being created by senior levels of government. That's equivalent to about a 4% property tax increase, and the majority of that is wrapped up in policing. I think that another choice that's been made by the provincial government is it's decided to stop paying its property tax on buildings that serve the entire region. And by the province doing that, that means that they are requiring city residents to increase the subsidy that they offer to the hundreds of thousands of residents throughout northwestern Alberta. And I think that if the province is going to force us to increase the subsidies we give elsewhere, we need to look at the voluntary subsidies that we give. I really do think alert is one of those, where we are the only municipality contributing to alert officers. We're contributing to roughly a third of this provincial force. And I think our residents are best served by making sure that these resources remain within city boundaries. So what I point out is I hope that if the city pulls back funding, I think there's some realistic expectation that the province would pick up some of that. Of the money that we're losing from the province, $800,000 of that is for fine revenues. In the legislation that allows that, the legislation says that that money should go towards justice initiatives. And they have also got a valve to put that towards other things, but justice initiatives specifically are highlighted. The province is also making legislative changes to require all municipalities to pay for policing, and their commitment to that is that that would be put back into police resources across the province, specifically in rural areas. I also point out that the provincial budget did have an increase of $50 million specifically for alerts, and I think as the province is both putting more money into policing, but also taking money away from municipalities, including the city of Grande Prairie, that directly relates to policing. I think as we're facing $2 million worth of increased police costs, we need to reevaluate how we're spending money on our policing. And I think that I don't love making this motion because I really like what Alert does, but I think the best bang for our residents' dollars is keeping these police within the city of Grande Prairie. So I hope council will support this motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Goon. Question for administration on that. I guess if this motion were to pass, how quickly could this happen where we could see these officers be part of our force, and how, I guess, Director Manuel see them enhancing our local detachment?
So the logistics of the actual transition, I don't have specifics on. I would anticipate that it certainly happen in the first half of 2020. But with that said, the priorities as to where those positions would be allocated locally within the municipal detachment, if that change was made, would be obviously subject to consultation with the detachment commander, the superintendent of the local detachment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. So I'll just enter to say I appreciate the sentiment about the difficult choices that the City of Grande Prairie is really forced into making around service levels. by decisions of other levels of government. I think that that's 100% accurate. And I think that there are more responsible ways to make a statement about that than withdrawing funding. I believe this would be a very direct statement, but and on some level I can support that, but I can't do it at the cost of what I truly believe would make Grande Prairie residents less safe. The alert model is intended to deal with longer term operations that are more complex in nature, that are multi-jurisdictional, and require specific skill sets and approaches that are not possible within the context of municipal policing by a single entity in a single sort of physical area. Ultimately, crime knows no boundaries, and the forces that keep us safe need the ability to operate in a similar manner. The more that we operate in an isolated manner, saying these are our cops, we'll keep them within our boundaries, ultimately would make Grande Prairie residents less safe, in my view. And I think that an underappreciated aspect of this would be that this may impact sort of recruitment to the Grande Prairie area. I think one of the things that is of interest to members is their ability to participate in those longer term, more complex operations. And I think that this is this career progression and the ability to join an alert team here in Grande Prairie, something that members appreciate. So while I appreciate the fact that the City of Grande Prairie is forced into these kind of decisions, I can't on good conscience. I can't cut off my nose to spite the provincial government's face, if that to really mess up a metaphor. But I think if there's a point that we're trying to make, there are other ways to make that point in a way that doesn't hamper the resources that Grande Prairie residents directly benefit from. And I think that the rededication of those officers to the type of work that is contemplated here, won't have the benefits that are intended. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Thanks for putting that there. Councillor Bressy, I totally understand your sentiments, and I think I was kind of on board, but I had a bit of offline conversation with Mayor Given yesterday, and I put a little more thought in it. The proceeds of crime that have been taken out of our region based off of our alert team member contributions. They've shut down pipelines, they shut down like gangs, they've shut down like their drugs and their cash rings. And we're talking about in the millions of dollars. And I would say since we expanded the alert team, I would maybe say close to tens of millions of dollars, or at least $10 million. I don't want to take that out of our region. I understand putting it on the streets, but I don't know if adding like 3 police officers to our police force is going to increase or decrease the times between calling an officer in 911 and having a response to a stolen lawnmower, or whatever that is. Do we do more check stops or whatnot? I'd rather we have a focused and concentrated team looking around the region, north, south, east, and west, and within our city to try to bust the bigger culprits of making our city less safe, causing opioid epidemics, and creating like the meth outbreak that is starting to happen in our streets. These aren't being done largely in bathtubs in our community. Some are, but the bigger ones are being shut down by teams like Alert, and I can't do that. I might be able to support maybe reducing the municipal contribution to Alert, but to take 3 officers out of that and reducing our team to 1, I just think it could be irresponsible. Well, 1 team, sorry, not 2 officers. We'd still have 2 officers. I just can't support it. So I appreciate your sentiment, and I want to make a statement to the provincial government too. You've listed lots of good reasons, but I can't support this in knowing the outcomes of what Alert has already created for our region.
Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I will support this motion. I absolutely appreciate the work that Alert has done and was very much in support of supporting this initiative last term. I do think that reducing the number from 5 to 2 is what our community needs at this time. Right now, you constantly hear about stolen vehicles, stolen bikes, everyday issues, and these everyday issues are only going to be mitigated by more boots in the streets that are working directly for us on day-to-day issues. And so, albeit Alert has done great work, and it's extremely important and essential to the safety of our community, by us reducing what is our fair share, to the contribution of Alert as a whole. I think will still allow us the opportunity to work with Alert over time, and they will do a great job as they continue to across the province. But it's time that we pay our fair share, and in my opinion, our fair share is the funding for 2 officers to Alert. So in turn, I like the motion that Councillor Bressie has done because it will also increase the force that works day to day in Grande Prairie. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just sorry, one more question for Director Manuel here. I know we had this earlier, but I forgot to ask. Does the county of Grande Prairie pay for any members for Alert?
No, just to be clear, the city of Grande Prairie is the only municipality that pays any municipal contribution to the Northwest Regional Team.
So I was kind of on the fence, but for me, that makes my decision where I will be supporting this. We're constantly hearing about rural crime, and we're hearing our county colleagues talk about that. I think by us paying for this, we're giving them an opportunity to not have to pay for it. And I think we have to, if the county's got rural crime issues, which is unfortunate for them, and they have their own problems, maybe they need to step up a little bit here, and they need to support Alert a little bit. And so by us supporting this, like a lot of other conversations we're having, because we continually support things, we let other people not have to support them. And so I agree with Councillor Clayton's comments. I think it's time for us to warm our boots back on the city where we need them the most. And so I'll be supporting this motion. I appreciate you putting it out, Councillor Bressie.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I agree. The rash of thefts and personal property crimes are on the increase. I'd just like to remind everybody that our Crown prosecutors are very, very overworked in this area. And they do a lot of triage with petty crimes. So having more boots on the street doesn't necessarily make our community safer. What it does is it creates more of a bottleneck at the court system of people that are going to do the crime and then get triaged and go back out on the street and continue to do crimes. Whereas the people who are making the busts within Alert are actually busting the big time criminals who are employing those people to do the petty crimes and to peddle their drugs and shut down those rings. I think this could have a very detrimental impact to community safety in our community by simply shutting it down. I think we got to look at it as a holistic system and not just as a part and parcel. A couple bike thefts, those guys aren't going to get prosecuted. They're just going to be back out on the streets, whereas a big drug ring is going to get shut down and those people are going to go to jail where they belong.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. To Councillor Thiessen, I think that the overall system does need support. And yes, we need more support. We need more courtroom space. We need more Crown prosecutors. The issue is the perception of safety as well. And so overall, I think Grande Prairie is a safe community, but people don't feel safe. And the way that they're going to feel safe is having access to more RCMP members. It's not to say that we want to downlog more into the court system, because the overall system does need support from the province. We need substantial support with traffic court, with more courtroom space, with another Crown prosecutor. But the perception of safety in our community isn't there. And by having presence of RCMP members, the perception of safety is there for people. And so in order to do that, we need more members. And there's no cost implication for transferring the people from Alert to the boots in the street. And so I just think the overall perception of safety in our community will be greatly increased by those members.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bressie, I see you're in the queue. I'll absolutely come to. Yeah, absolutely. I guess I just would share with Council my understanding of what municipal contributions look like to Alert regional teams across the province. I understand that Fort McMurray, the municipality contributes 5. Lethbridge, the municipality contributes 4. Minnesota, the municipality contributes 7. Red Deer City, the municipality contributes 6. And so Grande Prairie's contribution would be significantly under those. I think that there are many services that we deliver day in and day out that provide that core functionality of safety that our residents really don't know how they operate. And frankly, they don't care. They really don't care that the storm system works, and there's a lot of expense to that. And there are different ways to do many of those services. A service like Alert is one of those things that, whether our residents know it or not, it does keep them safer. Taking guns off the street because they're connected to a provincial and national network that allows them to get intelligence that wouldn't be available to our local detachment, keeps guns off the streets in Grande Prairie. When we think about petty crime that is front of mind for residents, It's reasonable to ask what drives petty crime. And in most cases, it's people who are looking for quick cash as a result of drug habits. And so the way to really have an impact to that is not to do more enforcement on the person who's stolen a lawnmower or tools or an ATV. Those are important, by all means, but that doesn't actually stop it. The goal of alert is to get at the root causes of crime that are multi-jurisdictional in nature, and our residents expect that from us. I will have a difficult time telling, other than saying we think the province needs to pay more to this type of service, and it's unfair for the municipality to subsidize. I think that's probably about as far as I could go. I would have a difficult time justifying to our residents why we chose to withdraw support for this service in advance of having that conversation with the province about our need to do so. We haven't given the province a chance to step up and fill this void. We're just going to redirect that funding to a different service, and I would have a difficult time justifying why we would do that to our residents. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you again, Mayor Given. I just want to touch on a couple things, one for Councillor Platt and one for Councillor Clayton. I guess I'll start with Councillor Clayton. I know that adding 3 officers to the street may, I guess, symbolically increase the perception of safety in our community, but removing 3 members of our municipal contribution to the alert team will also increase the perception of safety within the criminal element. We expanded this years ago because the criminal element was running roughshod over our region, and we decided we needed to do something about it, and we had a targeted investment. And it wasn't a part-time targeted investment. I believe that when we made that decision years ago, it was to shut this down, to curb this, and to reverse the trend of criminality happening within our city. I don't want to have this discussion in an open public debate and then have it hit in the news media and then have the criminal element go, oh, well, half of their contribution's gone, so we're safer. Let's start setting up shop again. And then we're facing the same problem and possibly even worse. On the other side of it, with Councillor Platt making mention that maybe our regional partners should share in the cost, I 100% agree in that. But we need to have that conversation with them, and we need to encourage them to have that conversation. And maybe this is a lobby point where we can say to the province, you're taking our court revenue. Maybe you can help us expand the service so it takes off the municipal burden later. We eliminate those positions now. It's going to take us a while to get it back, at least a year, maybe 2, maybe another council or 2 before those come back. So I would encourage council, please think about our community. I know the perception of safety is there, but it works both ways, both the positive and the negative. So please don't support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Just a question. When has the province provided a date when we would talk about some of this stuff, about the policing and alert and the costs? Is it going to be soon, or you mentioned it when you were talking that the province and the city would be talking?
Councillor O'Toole, what I said was we haven't given any indication to the province that this is something that we would consider. I suggested that should at least be a discussion before withdrawing fund. I didn't say that there was a scheduled meeting or the province was intending to talk with municipalities about this. I said that before we do something.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Can you see in the future when you would like to have this discussion? It's in your ballpark as the mayor with council. If we give the go-ahead to have a discussion about this, when do you think it would take place?
I think that's subject to the availability of the province. When will the province talk to the city of Grande Prairie about something that's important to us? So I can write a letter whenever and give notice, but I don't know that that's the effect that we're looking for. In the past, council has made motions directing the mayor to write a letter on behalf of the city. Certainly we could do that. We could schedule meetings with our MLA. We could attempt to get in front of the Solicitor General. We can do all those sort of things, but they're not necessarily directly within our control. I guess my bigger point here is if there is a systemic problem, a problem in a system, then we can, my suggestion is that we need to identify that to the people who have control over that system and give them an opportunity to make a change. That's a process. That's not a one-time meeting. That's a process. And my suggestion is that we should attempt that process before making this change.
And I understand that. My concern is that we're not really going to pass this budget until sometime in May. We're going to probably, we can make changes to the budget until, and I was wondering if we would have time between now and then to have some discussions. And if you, it's a huge investment, and it's a big decision. So and I'd like to act on that somehow.
So my observation of the process would be that council will likely view this budget on Monday of the coming week and approve it. And once the budget is approved by council, administration would act on the financial measures contained in that council approved budget. I think what you're referencing is in May, we set that mill rate and that property tax assessment comes in. The operation of what happens, where does somebody work starting January 1st is dictated by what we decide here.
Fair enough.
Councillor Minhas?
Thank you, Mayor. To me, listening all the both sides, keeping the RCMP on the road more, just it may cut down for the stealing the vehicle or stealing the property or something, but it will not cut down the drug dealers. And safety reason, I don't want to go back, Grand's name come back again onto our top list, crime city in like 14. And this alert thing is the more important than anything else. Stealing the vehicle, I can tell you the story, just happened to our shop 3 months ago. 5 minutes, guy started up the pickup and came up to say hello to somebody, and the pickup is gone. So those things, I don't think RCMP can stop those things, but to alert for the drug dealer and gangster shooting people on the Highway 40 or other places, we need those alert people. So I will not support this time, and if we can do more study for it in the future, maybe we'll think about it, but right now I will not support this proposal.
Councillor Minhas, Councillor O'Toole.
Just for clarity for myself, Mayor Given, at any given time as part of the alert team, we could draw resources from other parts of the province, correct? As long as he had a request from our officer in charge. So if there was a concern in Grande Prairie and we needed more resources, can we draw from those other alert teams?
So
I remember a while back, we had a problem, and the officer in charge had a toolbox where he could draw resources from, and that eliminated a big issue for a short time. And then they changed things around. Is that still possible today?
So what you're referencing is a crime suppression initiative where the RCMP, under our municipal contract, drew in other RCMP members, similar municipal contracts. So that had nothing to do with alert, but it had to do with sort of front-end crime suppression within Grande Prairie.
So my question, can we draw resources from other municipalities that have the alert team the way it's set up now?
Director Manuel.
Okay, certainly. So there's really two separate streams. So alert in their provincial, national, international level investigations has the ability to draw on resources to support their own investigations that are outside of the region. So they'll utilize, like you said, teams, investigative avenues from outside the region and bring those in. That being said, it's not exclusive to alert in that the local detachment commander, and through our contract with the RCMP, has access to shared services as well. For instance, if there's a serious crime such as a homicide, RCMP Major Crimes based out of Edmonton will take carriage of that file and provide supplement. So they both provide the opportunity to have additional resources added to meet their mandates. So they kind of work in conjunction with each other.
Thank you.
Thanks for that answer, Dr. Manuel. Councillor Friesen, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. I think this question is also for Director Manuel. I'm just wondering if how it came. how the number came to be a reduction from 5 to 2. Is that 3 an important number to stick to, or could we go somewhere in between?
So the reason that administration has proposed the reduction of 3 is we understand the importance behind maintaining a link within Alert. We do believe it is beneficial to the city to have representation and allocate resourcing to it. At the same time, our initial allocation to Alert was when the team initially started, there was 2 members that were operating. So it was to maintain some presence, but there wasn't a defined formula per se. It is a little bit in conjunction with when we look at some of those other municipalities that we compare to, like Red Deer. Red Deer has 178 officers in their municipal detachment. So as a percentage of their overall municipal policing complement, it's close.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? I don't see anybody else in the queue, so I would come back to Councillor Bressie to close. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I want to address a couple things I heard before I make my closing statement. And one is just the idea of that this hasn't been a conversation before. And I'd suggest, I know that it's something that I actually did specifically bring up when I engaged with the province at roundtables review, discussing the Police Act. I know it's also something that I've specifically in informal conversations with senior leadership at K Division is something I've specifically brought up. And I know that on a broader level, the city's engaged many times with the province talking about a disproportionate share of policing in the province and in the region being shared by cities in general and the city in particular. And I know that as at AUMA, when I had the opportunity to ask Minister Schweitzer in the Bear Pit, were there changes coming down the pipes to address some of the iniquities? The answer he gave was, yeah, we're looking at it, but we don't have any specific answers yet. But we're changing the funding model to get more money to do those. I think at some point enough is enough. We've been talking I know this has been a significant focus of my personal time on council, talking to the iniquities in policing, and I know that it's been a much longer conversation than my time on council. I think at some point enough is enough, and we need to make decisions to look after our residents, not after the province. My sincere hope with this is that we don't actually see less alert presence in the region. Like the province has already made changes to generate significant revenue through fines, including from the city of Grande Prairie. The province is we're talking about taking $480,000 away from a provincial initiative, while the province is taking over $800,000 away from us. So $320,000 more to put towards justice initiatives. I think it's reasonable to expect that to be put into provincial-wide scopes like Alert. The province is also introducing a new police funding model. They haven't set on it yet, but under the proposal they're suggesting they could generate up to $162 million. $162 million. That's money that they've promised will go into policing initiatives. I think the province is taking huge amounts of money from the city and other municipalities to invest into policing. I think we can expect them to be filling their share of alerts. Again, I don't think this is a statement to the province, but I don't think I'm making this motion because it's a statement. I think it's because it's a real decision that we need to make. The province has decided not just to take money away from policing, but also the province has decided to pay the city of Grande Prairie less property taxes. We should be providing less provincial services in return. Additionally, the RCMP is increasing the costs for our contract by over $2 million next year. I think that as our policing costs are going up by that much, we have a responsibility to make sure we're getting the best possible value for our residents. And I think that the best possible value for our residents is letting the province pay for provincial scope policing and keep in our city-funded officers within city boundaries. So I hope council will support this motion.
Thanks for that close, Councillor Bressie. We'll call for the vote on Councillor Bressie's motion on item number 34 to reduce the municipal contribution to Alert from 5 to 2 officers and redirect that contribution. So to be clear, this is a redirection of that contribution. So it doesn't actually offer any property tax savings. That those resources would be redirected into local RCMP operations. Okay, so we're just clear on the effect of that motion. I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. Councillor Bressie, did you have something further? You just have to get your mic clicked off. Okay. Okay. That deals with that item. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. I would like to move that council approve the suggestion. I'm not going to call it necessarily a recommendation, a yellow recommendation. Number 41, the neighborhood associations, removal of matching grants and reduced grants up to $1,500. We've had a few years of where we've really supported our neighborhood associations, and I'm glad that we have, and I deeply appreciate our neighborhood associations, but we simply can't afford to continue to do that right now. So I would like to see this $55,000 be an overall savings for us instead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. That motion is in order. Open for discussion debate. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm going to oppose this motion, and I'd encourage council to do the rest for a couple reasons. First of all, I think that our neighborhood associations are really great assets in the city, and I actually think that we've been under-resourcing them. Just the experience of both serving on a neighborhood association and also being in conversation with a lot of other neighborhood associations is we've pulled back significantly, not on the money we give neighborhood associations, but on the support we give to neighborhood associations. I think that that's leaving them to wither. I think that's leaving them to feel discouraged. I think that's leaving them wondering, does the city actually care about what we're doing? And I'm nervous that if we pull back funding, we'll not only give them less ability to do what they do, but also severely discourage volunteers that I think are already discouraged by some of the city actions that have been taken over the last couple of years. I think the other reason that I'll be opposing this motion is because I fear that it might be one of those penny wise, pound foolish things in terms of I look at the projects that neighborhood associations do and the projects that have come through these matching grants, and they do an incredible job of leveraging both volunteer hours and donations. And I think that every dollar, especially the ones going through the matching grants, sometimes we get different mileage on the money we're giving directly to neighborhood associations with no strings attached, but definitely the money going to these matching grants, they are all very much exponentially leveraged with volunteer hours and donations that go into them. We are getting assets into our communities that we know will be well loved, because it's not just a few of our staff saying we should do this or council saying we should do this, it's people in the community saying we should do this. So if a project goes through this funding, we know it'll be well loved, but also we know that it's going to be done for way cheaper than the city will be able to do it. So I think that this is an area where we invest some money and we get a lot more in return. So I'd encourage council to defeat this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Clayton.
A question for administration. Can you tell me in the existing program where the grants were $2,500 potential matching grants, how much was utilized in 2018 and 2019?
Director Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given. It would take me a couple minutes to gather the information, if that's okay.
Sure. And maybe Director Miller, while you're doing that, if you could also clarify, my understanding of the system was that there are grants to neighborhood associations, annual grants that exist every year, is nominally to cover their insurance costs. The city of Grand Prairie requires them to achieve their sort of incorporation, and so to cover their insurance costs and some of their filing costs, that sort of thing. So there's that portion, and then there's also the matching grant portion. So there's two different pieces there. My understanding is that this amount impacts both of those pieces. So when you come back to us, if you could just break down the impact on both sides.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Sorry, I was just quickly scribbling out all the positive benefits of neighborhood associations, and it's quite a list that I was able to throw together in just a minute. This is what Councillor Bressie talked to is everything that I was going to talk to, so I'll just reiterate. The social capital that we have in our neighborhood associations, in our neighborhood associations, actually give us community capacity to create the neighborhoods we want and to have a safer community. So by taking care of the funding, we actually chop off their legs even further because they don't have that administrative support as well. They won't get the insurance grants. Next thing you know, why even bother? But of what I've seen of the neighborhood association so far is a sense of community pride. They create an identity. Again, I wrote, Councillor Bressie almost took it right off my pen, penny wise, pound foolish to do this. the resource volunteer capital. But of the projects that I've seen done, we have a full fitness park that was created, picnic tables in various neighborhood associations. They help lobby for the park across the street from Councillor Bressy's house. Orchards, community gardens, gathering spaces have been created, community cleanups, recycle programs, events that the city doesn't have to do or pay for that are hosted by the specific neighborhood association as well. There are so many benefits. I could go on and on. I only had a minute to write down a list, and that's what I wrote of the list of all the benefits of what these grants provide to our community neighborhood associations. And I think it would be foolish if we say we're community-minded people and we're going to cut off our neighborhoods from having the ability to create the communities within our larger community. I think we're doing a disservice to the people who want to reside in our city of Grande Prairie. So I would encourage council to unanimously and soundly defeat this motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I also won't be able to support this motion. I think I brought it to our council earlier this year. I was at a Signature Falls Neighborhood Association event where I believe the city gave them $17,000 and there was an $80,000 end result for that community through leveraging. And it was one of the busiest days I've ever seen at a community park in Grande Prairie. And the amount of engagement that was there because people did this work and they bought into the work, what was second to none. So I will be making a subsequent motion about something else, but I want to support this motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Palat.
I don't want to support this motion, sorry.
I don't see anybody else in the queue. Then maybe I'll go to Director Miller to see if he's been able to gather additional information. Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Given. We still don't have the information. We're working on it.
Sure. Councillor Friesen on debate. Councillor Friesen?
Thank you. I don't disagree with and I completely agree with the value that our neighborhood associations have brought. But when we cut off administrative support was the beginning of not supporting our more disadvantaged neighborhoods anyway. These grants that we continue to have, I'd far rather see a reduction in grants and more administrative support for these groups, because it's going to be the communities, the savvier communities, the wealthier communities who are able to access these grants without the administrative support anyway. It's like your school councils in wealthier areas are doing a little more anyway. That's happening. That would happen in neighborhood associations as well. The neighborhood associations that have the capacity to leverage and access these grants without administrative support are going to be able to, and the neighborhood associations that can't do so without administrative support are left wanting. I would far rather see us reduce the support that we're giving in grants, matching, that sort of thing, and go back to having a little more administrative support for these organizations to be able to continue. And I just see that the communities who really have the capacity to be able to do things on their own anyway are going to be able to access these grants, and others are going to be at a loss to do so.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Bressy?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I want to very strongly agree with something that Councillor Friesen said, and then also respectfully push back against something, and that is that increased administrative support is something I would absolutely love to see. That's actually what I referenced earlier when I said that we've seen that we're doing less for these community neighborhood associations, and I would absolutely love to actually see more resources put into fostering and nurturing these. So 100% agree with that, and I'd point out, though, that this motion doesn't actually accomplish that. It just removes funding from them. But the area that I respectfully push back against is the assumption of which neighborhoods benefit from these. And I don't actually I've got guesses about different demographic makeups of Grande Prairie neighborhoods. I don't really know, but I do know for a fact that our three schools that struggle with high incidence of poverty tend to be Hillside, Avondale, and Swanhaven. I'd also point out that Swanhaven feeds from Highland Park, which arguably has our most effective neighborhood association in the city. I could speak from personal experience that Avondale has an active neighborhood association, and I also know that I visited Hillside Neighborhood Association events. Those would actually be 3 of what I'd suggest are some of the most effective neighborhood associations here in Grande Prairie, attached to communities that struggle. I know that I've also talked to people that are trying to establish neighborhood associations, or trying to revitalize neighborhood associations throughout the city. And Signature Park's kind of an example, is a rare exception in terms of it's a wealthier, newer community that actually has had a lot of success. But I know that in a lot of our more advantaged communities in town, a concern I've heard is that people don't spend as much time in their neighborhood parks. They don't spend as much time in their community, and those are actually the communities where anecdotally I've heard are having more troubles getting neighborhood associations happening. So I actually think neighborhood associations are a key and a very cheap part of helping our neighborhoods that already do struggle. So I really hope that council will maintain this funding. At the same time, I'd sure love us to have conversations about how can we increase administrative support for neighborhood associations too, because I really think that's missed.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue, and I'm looking over administration. I don't think they have additional information on the breakdown of those funds. Dr. Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I think I heard Danielle say almost. I think we had a little bit a Wi-Fi issue for a tad there. So she just needs another minute, and she should have it.
Dr. Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Given. So Danielle said the information that she has accessed right now, it's 10,000 of the 85,000 was accessed in 2018. In 2018, we don't have the 19 data right now, and then she's not able to access the data for the insurance question.
And so what happens when those funds aren't accessed in a year, the matching grants?
I believe I might defer to in surplus. Just reverts into the surplus for the budget year.
So the surplus that the city has, administration has forecasted that to about 300,000 to the end of the year, and so a portion of that 300,000 would be because these matching grants didn't get used.
Well, that was 2018 numbers.
Right. Yeah, in 2018, a portion of any surplus we had then would have been, and if they weren't fully subscribed this year, then that would be returned to this 2019 surplus. Okay, Councillor Bressie.
Thank you. I may be able to help with one question, but I kind of missed it. It was the question about how much insurance is costing them. I just heard insurance get brought up.
Go ahead, Councillor Bressie. If there's a point you want to make it.
Well, I can tell you guys that for the Avondale Neighborhood Association, who my understanding is has the same insurance policy the other ones do, the insurance costs $11.50 a year.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Clayton, and then we'll look to close the discussion on this if there's any.
Overall, I think that to hear that in 2018, 10,000 of 80,000 approximately was applied for is a little bit disheartening, and I agree in the value in neighborhood associations, and know from living in a neighborhood that has had a hard time to get an association off the ground, what programs, etc., can be put together when they are successful. So, I appreciate the work they do. I think they should continue. I don't know about reducing the grants, because the ones that are doing great things should have the opportunity to apply for that money. My concern is the overall amount that's sitting there. And so, end of the day, I don't think it's our responsibility to, it's not our right to keep people's money and then pass it on in a surplus. We should be able to allow people to keep their own money. So if our taxes are less, which means we spend less money today, people have more money in their pockets. And even if it's going to a surplus next year, when people have more money to spend in our community, it's better for our economy. So if this fund was reduced, it's obviously part of the whole equation of setting the taxes. And so if the program's not continually being executed, why fund it? And so it's, unfortunately we don't have the 2019 numbers, so maybe administration has the 2017 numbers. But at this point, to hear in 2018 only 10 of 80,000 was applied for, then we obviously don't need the money to sit there. And to pass it on to a surplus is great, but it still means you pay your tax bill and that we held on to your money for the year. And I don't think the city should hang on to people's money. I think people should be allowed to spend their money where they want to spend their money. And so I don't love the fact that the associations that are great are going to be restricted in applying for grants when they're doing a good job. So, and reducing the grants to $1,500, I don't support. So if this motion is not successful, I'll have a subsequent motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. I don't see anybody else in the queue, and I would then check to see if Councillor Friesen wishes to close.
Thank you. No, I think I've said what I wanted to say, but I do. I think I see the way this is going, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Then I'll look to our Community Services Director, who may have additional information.
Thanks, Mayor Given. So we have some adjusted numbers, and I'm hoping these are accurate, but for 2018, it was maybe up to 17,000 for the matching grants, and then 32,500 roughly for other expenses, including insurance costs. For 2019, sorry, I'll backtrack. For 18, it was a total of 6 applications. For 2019, we've only received 4 applications to date, and those are coming to committee in December yet. So we haven't spent or allocated that money yet.
Okay, thanks very much for that information. So Council, knowing those details, I think that's just sort of background on the decision that we're about to make on Councillor Friesen's motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would move that council council fund the neighborhood grant programs to a maximum of $60,000 annually.
I'm just going to have to look to administration to make sure. So all of the motions have been in terms of have been in the context of a reduction, and so we would need to. So we need to know what we're actually reducing the budget by.
Council reduce the neighborhood associations by $20,000, funding line by $20,000.
That I'm just looking at our folks with the spreadsheets. That gets to Councillor Clayton's intention, reduction of $20,000 to neighborhood association funding. All right, Dr. Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I think it was a total of 85,000, so that would bring it down to 65,000 then for the future.
Intention, Councillor Clayton. Okay, so a reduction of $20,000 to the neighborhood associations area. Open for discussion debate. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Just a question for Councillor Clayton about the intention of this motion is, my understanding is we're talking about 2 different types of grants. There's a $2,500 grant that neighborhood associations get every year that's kind of no strings attached. You have to have a good board. You have to use it appropriately, but there's not requirements on application for that. You just get that if you're a society in good standing. And then there's also on top of that, there's matching grants that they can apply for that are discretion of council. Is your intent to reduce those matching grants?
Councillor Clayton, you'll have to turn your mic on. No, you have to.
Yes, my intent is to reduce the matching grant program. I don't want to chop the knees off of neighborhood associations. I want the ones that are operating well to be successful and have an opportunity for matching grants. My intent is just for us not to hang on to money so that we can pass it forward to a surplus. So, so history shows that it's being underutilized, and by reducing this by $20,000, we can review it in a year again. And if for some reason we get a ton of applications that don't get approved in 2019, maybe in 2020, maybe in 2020 we look to increase it. But for just to have it sit there is, in my opinion, not necessary.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm not going to support this motion or the reduction, and basically based off of the premise that it was put out. It's not our job to hold on to other people's money and create a surplus. Well, it's our job to be able to empower people to do what they want. And if it's not a fully subscribed program, then we rein it back in and we throw it into our reserves. because that's exactly what reserves are. Most of our surplus is contributed back into our reserves, which goes to keep our organization stable and afloat. It's a small chunk of money to hang on to. I think, relatively speaking, is about just a little over $1 per person that we, if it's not a fully subscribed program, that we would be doing at, 60,000 people, let's say, at that big view. I don't think it's a large sum of money, and I think we spend a lot of time on debate over tiny amounts of money. And I want to empower our neighborhood associations, and I agree with Councillor Bressie and Councillor Friesen that if we want to see a full subscription of these, it's a lot harder for any member of our community to access the grants of the city without a little bit of guidance. And if we want to see a fully subscribed program, then we need to resource it to point people in the right direction. So I can't support it.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I will be supporting the motion. I think that we've had other themes like this within our green package presented by administrations, just resetting the funding that we're doing to a historical level. So I wasn't in support of the first motion because I do have a big urge for neighborhood associations. But if historically that's all we're spending, I agree with Councillor Clayton. I don't think that we over allocate money to where it's not being spent. And if a year from now we do get a bunch of applications coming in, I'm happy to review this and look at increasing it. But I don't think it's in our best interest to sit on money to hopefully put it in the reserves.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Clayton, you're in the queue again. I'm going to skip over to go to Councillor O'Toole.
Be supporting this. The neighborhood association program's been going on for about 10 years, I think maybe a year or two, but it's been very successful in some areas. In other areas, it's not that successful. When you have a lot of rental homes where people are there, they're just sort of sleeping and they're not necessarily involved in the community or not. They're there to work and they're gone. But I really truly think that the amount of money that we're going to be giving them will be supporting them beyond their needs at this point. There's been a lot of changes in the last 10 years on this neighborhood associations, and some of them are very positive. So I'm sure that if we went with this would be a positive thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll be supporting this motion. It's a sad one for me to support because I would absolutely love to see this program fully subscribed. And if it was fully subscribed, then I would be fighting you very passionately to protect this funding. But I do agree that we should be aligning the pool to hit what's actually there. So I'll be supporting this motion, but I also hope that council really means what it says. What I'm hearing from some voices that, hey, if this does get fully subscribed and we have to turn people away, we're open to increasing this.
Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue for discussion debate, so I'll go to Councillor Clayton to close.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Yeah, I would encourage council to support this. History shows it's not fully subscribed. To have money sit there, no matter how small it is not necessarily. It's in good conscience we make a decision that historically the money's not being utilized. Why have it sit there just because? We have many sort of other associations and, sorry, not associations, but committees that get oversubscribed for applications. And so to have money just sit there hoping that it grows isn't really responsible in my opinion. So historically this hasn't been fully utilized. And so I just don't think the money needs to sit there. Thank you.
Councillor Clayton, that was the close. So we'll call for Councillor Clayton's vote. The vote on Councillor Clayton's motion with respect to line 41 to reduce the amount for neighborhood association matching grants by $20,000. I think I got that correct, Councillor Clayton. Then we'll call for the vote on that motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I think this is a good conversation and I'd like to see us have more of it. So I'd like to make a motion that we ask administration to bring back the neighborhood matching grants process to the appropriate standing committee for review. My intent with that is I think that there is more potential with the neighborhood associations and I'd like to have more of a conversation about it. I don't think this needs to be a big report. I'm hoping it's just basically the policy of what we currently have in place, but I'd like to have us have a conversation about it.
Okay. Thanks for that motion for referral. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just suggest maybe you're open to a friendly amendment, or maybe I'll move a real amendment. But we've got a concern I've had in the past. We've also got a parks improvement grant and a community enhancement grant that have, at least we did in 2018 with the report I could find, and I forget what changes we made. But I've had concerns about us having kind of duplicate grants that might create duplicate staff work, but also I know I've talked to neighborhood associations. They're saying we don't know which grant we should apply for. Should we apply for both? I just think that there's similar grants that I think we should be reviewing them holistically if we want to review them, not just this one in isolation.
Councillor Platt?
I would be open to those amendments. So they were parks enhancement, and sorry, what was the other one, Councillor Bresley?
Or maybe if it was just and similar grants, because I might have the wrong names for them.
Okay, no, fair enough. I would, yeah. That was the intent of it, I guess, is I want to make sure that when we're having these opportunities, that the groups are being able to utilize the funding and that we understand what they're utilizing.
Okay, so we'll make sure to append that to the end to say and other similar grants. Administration appreciating the intent that they're grants from the city to external organizations in order to make improvements in defined local areas. Director Miller? Thanks,
Mayor Given. And we already have a bit of a process in place, so we are already reviewing that, but we can bring it back to committee then.
Great. Thanks very much. I don't see anybody else. Thank you for Councillor Palat's motion of referral. I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Were there, Councillor Clayton?
Thanks, Mayor Given. Regarding item, sorry, I'm just finding it. Number 40, in the Management Center 2000, could administration clarify for me of that $150,000? Is there a portion of it that's specifically for the management of the building, and a portion of it of labor? Could you give me a bit more information on what that $150,000 represents?
We'll go to Director Miller.
Thanks, Mayor Given, and I think Susan's able to help you out on this one. She's more familiar with the contracts than I am, and we may not have all the details available, but we can speak to the
Director Walker.
Part of it.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So I have been trying to review the terms of the contract. I got another copy of it. I don't know what exactly the amounts that are included in the $150,000, what that calculation is, how much might be rent, how much might be cost savings. And so I would appreciate more time to be able to give council a good answer as opposed to a winging it answer.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would like to make a motion then to direct administration to bring back to the appropriate standing committee further explanation of what this $150,000 represents and potential information from the contract as it exists today.
Okay. So motion referring that to committee. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Plott, you're in the queue before that motion was made.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Yeah, I was going to make a similar motion, I guess, and mine was going to be that administration bring back a report to the appropriate standing committee on the current operations of Center 2000, so similar in line of Councillor Clayton's.
Okay. So we have Councillor Clayton's motion of referral. In this case, I'll say that I'm opposed to the motion of referral. I think we've dealt with a number of other items as significant as the alert, disposition of members to alert, where council said we can't afford to do this anymore, and so therefore we need to make a choice. I would suggest that this is in a similar vein, and if administration has identified a way to do cost savings, then I'm not quite sure why council would say that this one is significantly different than others. So I won't be in support of the motion of referral. If we want to act on this, then we act. If we don't want to act, then we don't, and that's fine. But in this case, I don't understand the differentiation between the others, so I won't support the motion of referral. Any other discussion before I go to Councillor Clayton to close? Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Just to your question, the difference for me is that administration doesn't have the information readily at hand to make this decision. In regards to alert and other organizations that we've discussed today, administration was able to provide the information, and on this one in particular, the information isn't readily available. So I would encourage council to support this motion, and down the road, hopefully in the near future, we can have a discussion of what the operationally this looks like, what portion of it we're funding simply for building management, if there's potential contractual concerns with an organization such as the Chamber of Commerce. I need a fulsome piece of information before I'm prepared to make those decisions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton, for that close. So I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. That item would be referred. Is there any other business to come forward before we break for lunch? Councillor O'Toole.
Item number 36. I'd like to make a motion that we continue to fund.
So, Councillor
Or
O'Toole, the
remove
process that we've done on all of these is if you want to take it out, then you make the motion to take it out.
I want to take it out. No, sorry. Leave it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor O'Toole. So no action arising there. And I don't see anybody else ringing in. Then, Council, what we would do is when we return, we would move on to the staff additions. So this would be the conclusion of our deletions section. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Morgan. Just, I guess, on before, if we're going to be moving off this before lunch, I just do have a question on line item number 36. Can I just get updated on how many current members in the fire department we have in education and fire inspection?
Dr. Manuel?
It's my understanding that there is 4.
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess at this point, I'm going to go with what they're recommending and not support this. And not make a motion to fund this. This is something that I feel like next year that I definitely will want to look at more thoroughly. I do feel like we've got a lot of education dedicated to the fire department, and I think it's an area that we definitely could improve upon and review.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I had a question for administration. I think it would be for Chief of Staff Burke in regards to item number 42. This elimination of the program of corporate sponsorship, is this the whole amount?
Mr. Burke.
Thanks, Mayor Given. This is the city's cash contributions to sponsorships. There is some limited Revolution passes or Eastlink passes for different things. We're working on a process to capture some of those costs, but we haven't completed that yet. But this would be the cash components for us sponsoring things.
Thanks for that.
So I guess my concern with it, and I'm just sort of thinking here on the fly, but across the city, many businesses and organizations are in a position where they are having to reduce their sponsorships for organizations. The reality is that there's only so much money at the end of the day, and when although an event or a hockey tournament or whatever it may be a great cause or a great initiative or create tourism, create economy, at some point there's tough decisions to make. And so with this amount, it sort of loops everything in with gift in kind, what the municipality does, through reduction or elimination of fees on facility rentals, such as, an event, a large-scale event happens in Bear Creek Park, and there's substantial gift in kind. And so this corporate sponsorship of $25,000 is a really small amount. However, every business owner today is making tough decisions on what they should support or not. So I'm going to put forward a motion, and it's very small in nature, but it's simply, in my opinion, it sends the message that just because it's a great event and just because it's going to create tourism or just because it's something we should do, that we don't always have to do it. And so I would make a motion in regards to corporate sponsorships that this amount, I got to think backwards because it's a negative motion. So I'd move that council.
You just make the motion about how much you want to cut.
Yeah, sure. So I would like to cut $5,000 from the corporate ship sponsor budget. Thank you.
Okay. Motion to cut $5,000 from the corporate sponsorship budget. Open for discussion debate. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Just a question for administration. Within our economic development department, we have about an $800,000 budget. Do we have any money within that $800,000 that's allocated towards any sponsorships or events or anything specific that we'd have an overlap with this?
Director Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Not that would directly overlap with this. A lot of the stuff that would qualify for funding or is funded out of this fund, I wouldn't suggest is directly economic development in nature, although there might be some crossover.
Thank you.
So for perspective, and Mr. Bork could probably do a similar thing, but you know, my understanding is that this is the kind of thing where the City of Grande Prairie may sponsor in the past a hole at a golf tournament for the Chamber of Commerce, for example, or the Home Builders Association or other entities like that. They are strict cash contributions. And they are cash contributions, maybe sometimes to community events, but they are really of a nature of the City of Grande Prairie's name and logo being displayed at some community event in a similar manner to other organizations that would do the same. And so I'll give just a really direct example that in the past at Home Builders Association, the County of Grande Prairie has always sponsored a hole, and the City of Grande Prairie for quite a long time didn't and wasn't represented. And so this is the kind of that's the kind of things where I would suggest that these funds are used most often. But yeah, just would provide that context. I don't think it's necessarily the types of things that we would do with other departments. And my belief is that this amount is the result of successive years of centralization. I think each department used to have a little amount that they would have in sponsorship. A number of years ago, that was pooled into one area in the organization and reduced, rather than each department having a little amount to spend on sponsorship. It was all pooled into one area. So this is everything pooled in one place and having been reduced over the years. That's what's reflected currently. Councillor Thiessen.
I'm going to apologize ahead of time for my bluntness on this. This proposed cut is something that we utilize our funds to show smaller events and organizations that the City of Grande Prairie is behind you. We do get a little bit of a perk from that. But in the grand scheme of things, when you work out on a $190 million budget, to be talking about reducing a budget item line that's worth about 1/100th of a cent in comparison to what our overall budget line is, it's not the only message I think that's sending to the community is not that we're being fiscally responsible, it's that we're cheap. And I mean, we've done a lot of significant cuts. We've done a lot of significant shifts. I think we've sent our messages to the community here. I think to pull back our support for events that don't necessarily require us to be there, but would appreciate our support by a minuscule amount of $5,000, that's not going to affect anybody's taxes. I appreciate that, you know, we want to show that we're fiscally responsible and that we've got restraint, and we want to send to the community that, you know, we're not going to support you as much as we did. But I don't want to be known as a cheap counselor, so I'm not going to support this.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. A question for administration that I'm hoping to make a statement after, but am I right in I'm assuming that most of the events we sponsor have some sort of charitable component to them in terms of they're either run by a nonprofit or they're private or they're a company creating some sort of event to raise money for a charitable purpose? Is that a correct assumption that I've got behind this?
That isn't a criteria, but looking back at 2019, that would reflect the bulk of the funding to date.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bressie.
And if I may, I'm gonna oppose this, and I think the reason for me is a goal I actually really had coming into profit or into budget was preserving nonprofit funding that the city's giving, and for that's not a priority I have coming in every single year, but I think that our nonprofit community makes obvious contributions to our quality of life. It makes contributions in ways that are not just often better than government can make those contributions, but also a lot cheaper than government can make those contributions. I think that by making sure we have a viable nonprofit community, that's not just good for us, I think it's also fiscally responsible. And I know that our nonprofits are hit hard both by contraction on private philanthropic giving and also by a provincial budget that's giving a big hit to a lot of them. And for that reason, I'm nervous about anything, and even though it's a small amount, I'm nervous about anything that might have impact in 2020 on the money we're giving to nonprofits. Again, it's not a generally rule I have year after year coming into budget, but this year I think it's really important that we're protecting support we give to nonprofits. And for that reason, I'm going to be opposing this.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Clayton, you're next in the queue. I'm going to skip over you unless there's another point. And folks, I would, number one, I want to make sure that we're done this section before we break for lunch, so we can talk about these items as long as we want to. And I would just observe that we're talking about $5,000 here. So maybe just weigh how many times you want to be in the queue on a $5,000 item before we sort of retread our positions. We could probably all state them once on this. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I can appreciate it's only $5,000, but if you ask members of the community about $5,000, that's an awful lot of money to a lot of people. And I look at we're realigning a lot of other costing. We're looking at dropping our community group funding. I see this as a similar vein as community group funding, and us being maybe just a little more oversightful on just because we have the money doesn't mean we spend it. If it doesn't make sense to sponsor a home builders event or any kind of event, then we shouldn't be doing it just because we have the money. So I can appreciate it's literally not even a penny on the dollar, but it's $5,000, and budgets can get in trouble. If it was your home budget right now, you wouldn't be throwing, oh, it's only $100. $100 in your home budget means a lot of money. $5,000 in this budget still means a lot of money, so I will be supporting the motion, the intent of the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Plott. Councillor O'Toole.
Just a question to the Chief of Staff. Can you tell me let's start right from scratch. Is this fund been depleted every year that we've offered it, and when does it get depleted? Is it oversubscribed? Let's just say.
Chief of Staff.
It is oversubscribed in applications. Over the last couple of years, we have not reached the $25,000 max, but we've been close. We've been within $1,000 or $1,500. Right now, we've expensed $16,000, just over $16,000. We have some applications in the queue that will bring us up to $21,900, and there's still 6 weeks left here in the year. But we do decline applications throughout the year, but we would be oversubscribed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. So I don't see anybody else in the queue other than Councillor Clayton to close. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a comment in regards to nonprofit organizations. I truly appreciate the work that volunteers and executive directors and nonprofit organizations do within our community. And without our nonprofits, they're the social fiber of our community and they do great things. It doesn't mean that they all need money. Many of them are wealthy in their own way. And at some point, just to have our name on a golf hole or on a table at an event, it doesn't mean that organization sincerely needs the money. We just feel we need to be there. And so I think that at some point it was commented that, this year we're potentially going to almost max it out. I don't think it's a big decision. $5,000 to decrease this fund, sure, there'll be some organizations that are told no. I think that's okay. And as Councillor Plott said, we're looking at reducing community group funding. This goes hand in hand. So although $5,000 is a small amount in the scheme of things, I think that it's really important for us to be to addressing the nonprofits. And many of them, as I mentioned, have a lot of money and don't necessarily just need our name on the table. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Clayton. We'll call for the vote on the motion to reduce the corporate sponsorship budget by $5,000. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Is there any other business arising before we break for lunch and then come back in the afternoon to deal with additions? I don't see anybody ringing in. Then I will make the assumption that this section is closed. When we come back from our lunch break, we will deal with staff recommendations on additions to the organization for 2020. We will break for, do we need an hour, Council? How's it? Yeah, no? What's that? Half hour? So we'll break for half hour and we'll come back for 1 o'clock. Okay, thank you.